All right. I'm not going to give too much of a background on this. Hopefully, you guys already know about it. Rockets, Houston Rockets, that is, basketball team. Their general manager recently tweeted out in support of the Hong Kong protesters. And the NBA, though not exclusively, the NBA had an interesting reaction to it. A lot of it stems from, you know, NBA gets a lot of money. It's a market, right? A huge market out there in China when it comes to, basketball. They have games out there, or more so compete against some of their teams out there and so forth. Now, when it comes to the Rockets, former basketball player Yao Ming, and so you got a lot of supporters out there. And this apparently ticked them off. And this is just so interesting because LeBron James had something to say about it. Extra woke LeBron James. So let's go to the video real quick. I'm gonna play it. I got a notification on my phone about this. I'm gonna play it, and then what we're gonna do is analyze it. So let's check out what Mr. LeBron James had to say about Rockets GM's tweet.
About this freedom of speech, yes, we all do have freedom of speech, but at times there are ramifications for the negative that can happen when you're not thinking about others and you're only thinking about yourself. So I don't believe I don't want to get into a word or sentence feud with Daryl Morey, but I believe he wasn't educated on the situation at hand, and he spoke, and so many people could have been harmed, not only financially but physically, emotionally, spiritually. So just be careful what we tweet and we say and what we do. Even though yes, we do have freedom of speech, but there can be a lot of negative that comes with that too.
Last question, please.
We all talk about
So basically, he's saying that he was not educated on the matter. And the more interesting thing, or the most interesting thing to come out what he just said, was more so stemming around this whole, a lot of people could have been hurt financially, not only financially, but spiritually and so forth. The fact that, and that's just not just as a libertarian in me, that's part of it, I won't lie, but China's all jacked up. China's been jacked up for a long time. Communism will do that to you. And Hong Kong trying to remain free or independent of China in any way, shape, or form is a positive as I see it. And for someone to, and this is what makes it so interesting, because LeBron has a lot to say about, he's getting fused with Trump, and he has a lot to say about the social issues, a lot surrounding Black America and so forth. So this is just so interesting because he completely basically negates all of his activism in that regards by essentially siding with China or disagreeing with more so what he said. Because the Rockets GM, he didn't say anything out of line. It was just more so, yes, he tweeted in support, support Hong Kong's freedom and the protesters and such. And he's talking about, well, people could have got hurt. It's like, what do you think China has been doing for I don't know how long? And I'm not one to say shut up and dribble. I think when that whole line came out, when LeBron started becoming more politically and socially vocal, I thought that was a silly sort of narrative to adopt, considering that, yes, just because he's a basketball player does not mean that he should more so suppress himself in terms of his political or social views. It's sort of like a lot of people saying to me, you should stick to comics. Like, no, that's not how this works. You don't get to dictate that. That doesn't change the fact that he's completely wrong, but it's just crazy how this comes from him. Now, the obvious thing is that if I'm not mistaken, LeBron is signed with Nike. He has on the Lakers Nike basketball shirt, if I'm not mistaken. And we know, it's not a secret, that China benefits a lot from having some of their products made in China, and you can argue that that's sort of where he comes from, and a lot of people understand that that's in his camp. So they're going to say that, and it's not just with that. When you consider NBA, they don't want to hurt themselves in terms of the money that they get from the communists, which is always interesting when you consider communism. But nonetheless, It's just how woke he is on everything else. Yet now it's, well, he just wasn't educated. Like, are you educated, LeBron James? But for him to say that, of all things, you think he'd be front line, so uber woke, socially active, using his platform to bring about social awareness and change. You think he'd be the first one to be like, what he said, knowing that his words carry clout. What what Moore said, he was correct, or something of that nature. You'd think he'd be the first one to say that. But he takes a position that is almost, I mean, it's not almost, it's pretty hypocritical to some of what he, the positions that he takes elsewhere, because we're looking at liberation of an oppressed people. And this is just crazy to me. And again, it's this. I don't want to go there with the whole, he just shut up and dribble. That's not. I just don't think that's really fair to say that. But I think, and I've said before, LeBron, he has some interesting positions, and I don't quite think he even understands a lot of the subject matters that he speaks upon. And I think that, yes, it's nothing wrong with, I talked about this just on my stream the other day about, and I talk about this all the time, about how it's okay to be ignorant, as in, what I mean by that, in that ignorance is lacking knowledge. Ignorance crosses over into stupidity when you loudly get out there and speak on something that you're knowingly ignorant on. Everybody's ignorant. There's not one individual in this world that knows everything about everything. Ain't nothing wrong with staying in your lane at all. But for this dude, of all people, to get out there and say this, it almost seems like he doesn't grasp it, or maybe he does. Maybe he does understand that there's a lot of money when you consider the Chinese market. He doesn't want to make them mad. When you consider Nike Basketball, who I believe he is signed with as well, we talk about ramifications. Maybe he or his camp at least understands that, and he's not looking at it from the social aspect, which he does seemingly other things. He's more so looking at it from, all right, this might hurt my bottom line. This might hurt sort of the organization or company, rather, that I get a lot of money from. Oh, man, imagine that, super woke LeBron taking the side of an oppressive communist government.